President Trump's ultimatum to the governor of North Carolina is setting off a race to host the Republican National Convention in August. Earlier this week, the president said the RNC would be moved unless the state's Democratic governor could guarantee full attendance at Charlotte's basketball arena. Here is how Roy Cooper responded.
I will say that it's okay for political conventions to be political, but pandemic response cannot be. Everybody wants to get back into action soon, but I think everybody knows that we have to take some steps to make sure that people are protected, because this virus is still going to be with us in August, and we're going to have to take steps to protect people.
Cooper's refusal to give a guarantee prompted Georgia Governor Brian Kemp and Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, both supporters of the president, to offer up their states to host thousands of Republican delegates and convention attendees. Steve Contorno is the political editor for the Tampa Bay Times. He joins me now to talk about the prospect of Florida taking over conventions this summer. Hi, Steve. Welcome. Great to have you with us. So you wrote that it took a year for Tampa to plan for hosting the 2012 Republican convention. What would it take for Florida or any other state to pull it off in essentially 3 months?
It would be quite the turnaround to accomplish something like that, given how much effort and energy and money goes into pulling off one of these conventions. These are bid years in advance. It often takes a ton of planning. There's a lot of security that goes into this. Structures need to be built. Police officers need to be brought in from all over the state. Hotel rooms need to be booked throughout the entire area. It's not easy, and it takes a lot of time. Trying to pull this off in 3 months would be quite the undertaking.
And in 2016, police expected 50,000 people would visit Cleveland for the RNC. What Florida cities are large enough to handle that kind of influx? And how are these city leaders reacting to this possibility?
There's 4 large metro areas in Florida that potentially could handle this. You have the Miami area, which bid on the 2020 Democratic convention, came in second place to Milwaukee. So they obviously had some ideas for how they could pull off an event like this, but it's also the area where there's the largest outbreak in the entire state of coronavirus. Tampa hosted the 2012 convention. The mayor of Tampa was the chief of police during that convention, so she knows what it takes to do the security. However, she said, this is ridiculous, it's too quick to turn around, and we don't have any interest in hosting it here. The other 2 cities would be Orlando and Jacksonville. Obviously, Orlando has a lot going on right now already, trying to get its theme parks back on track, and that seems to be a priority for them. I haven't heard if they would be interested, but Jacksonville is interested. Their mayor is a former Republican leader in the state of Florida. He is an ally of the governor. His name's Lenny Curry, and he has expressed via Twitter that he would welcome the convention to the Jacksonville area. Jacksonville is where they recently held one of those UFC fights, was one of the first sporting events to go back on the air. So he said, we have experience with this already.
So, Steve, if we sort of compare Florida to North Carolina, Florida's population is about twice what North Carolina's is. Florida also has twice as many COVID-19 cases and more than twice as many deaths. So is Florida actually in a better position when it comes to this virus to host the convention? Or is it just a matter of greater willingness?
Yeah, it really depends who you talk to. The governor has said that we are ready to open, and they've been slowly reopening the state's economy since the beginning of the month. So far, we haven't seen a huge spike in any new cases or in deaths or hospitalizations, so that has been reassuring. But you have experts who are warning that a second wave is coming, and that Florida, because it reopened more quickly than some other places, could be hit more quickly. So far, though, Mike Pence, the vice president, said that Florida, Georgia, Texas, states that have reopened already and seem to be heading in the direction that the president wants, would be well suited to host a convention. I think there are a lot of people who run these cities and run these types of events who would disagree with whether or not it's prudent to have that many people in an enclosed arena, for a long period of time. Especially these events are often attended by older people and especially in the Republican side. So Florida has, it would be difficult to see them being able to pull this off, but there is a willingness.
And so, Steve, while we have you here, I also want to ask about your reporting on White House Press Secretary Kaley McEnanys, who you found has been voting by mail for a decade, despite defending President Trump's attacks on the practice. What did you learn?
Yeah, the press secretary is actually a Tampa native, so she's from our area. And, as she has been a forceful defender of the president and has, sided with him on the vote by mail issue, we decided to check her voting record. And what we found is that in every election she has participated in since 2010, which is 11 elections, she has voted by mail in all of them. During that time, she spent some of her years in college. She also, has worked for the RNC and worked out of state for the Republican Party. So, but she has called Tampa her home. She owns a house in South Tampa. So that's where she is registered to vote, and that's where she's been getting her vote by mail sending back to. So yeah, for 10 years, she has voted by mail here. And we asked her about that, and she said, I'm allowed to vote absentee when I'm away from my home. And that's what I did.
All right. Well, Steve Contorno of the Tampa Bay Times, thanks so much for sharing your reporting with us.
Thank you, Tanya.